Last class, we looked at value, we looked at inner texts, we looked at editable and uneditable containers. So today's class will be continuation. I think we rounded it off at variables, right? Today's class will be continuation of that class. So in the last class, I said you can have a variable like this, variable var equals to 5, and if you want to display it in a dialog box, you can use alert. And when we say alert var, this will alert 5. And in case you don't want to alert, maybe you want to display it in a container on the screen. So maybe inside this p tag, I can give this an ID. Then I can call this container. So we come here and use the ID container. So when we get to the browser, it's going to place the var inside this container. So we see 5 in the container. I think that's like the summary of the last class. Today we continue with variables. This variable name, there are some conditions that your variable name must meet. You cannot just use any text as your variable name. So I can just say variable, let's my value equals to 20. Now there are some conditions. You see this, there's this red line beneath this telling me that there's an error here. There's a problem with this. The name of your variable, that is the label on your container, must meet some conditions. And only when it meets these conditions does it become a valid variable name. But if it doesn't meet these conditions, it's not going to be a valid variable name. Let's look at these conditions together. Firstly, the name of your container, the label on your container, cannot have spaces. So you can see this space here, it's a bug, right? So the label on your container must not have spaces in between. It must be a single word. So this can become var. This can become value. And this can even become my value. This is a single word. It must not have any space in between. That's the first condition. The second condition is that your variable name must not have any special character except $ and underscore. Those are the only two special characters you are allowed to use. That means I can't say maybe plus is a special character. I can't say minus is a special character. I can't say division, this // is a special character. So you are not allowed to use special characters for your variable name, except the only two special characters you are allowed to use. They are this $sign and underscore. Except these two. So even comma is not allowed, right? Except these two, $ and underscore, you are not allowed to use any special character for your variable name. So meaning that this is a valid variable name. This is a valid variable name also, because underscore is allowed, but hyphen is not allowed. It's a special character. Any questions so far? Okay, let's move on. Next is, your variable name must not be a keyword. Keywords are words with predefined meaning. They are words that already have what they are doing in JavaScript. So your variable name must not be a keyword. Example is this. If is a keyword. We get to if some. If is a keyword, so your variable name cannot be a keyword. Your variable name cannot be, this is another keyword, else. your variable name cannot be a keyword. So there are a lot of keywords in JavaScript, and the more you code, the more you get used to them. You don't need to cram them. As you use them, you get used to them. And thank God for VS Code. In fact, when you type any of those keywords, it will underline it for you that your variable name cannot, that this is a keyword, and that your variable name cannot bear this name. So lastly, your variable name cannot start with a number. It cannot start with a number. Your variable name can have number in between, but number cannot start it. So I can't say one person. This one, because it's beginning this, it's starting this word. This one starts with a number. This is an invalid variable name. But number can be at any other location. It can end with a number. It can be in the middle. But it must not start with a number. This is invalid. So those are the rules that guide your variable name. Who has questions on that? Okay, let's proceed. Having established that, remember I said your variable name must not have spaces in between, right? Imagine I have a variable called ripe oranges. Maybe I have some oranges. Some of them are ripe, some of them are not ripe. So maybe the number of the ripe ones, they are 20. So, and I want to get a variable to store that. I can have, this is not allowed. Ripe oranges. Okay, someone is raising up front. Okay, can we all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, alright. Google me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Alright, okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Alright, okay, thank you. So I think that's your network. Google me, Joshua. I think this is with your network. Okay. You can leave and join again. Let's proceed. So ripe oranges equals to 20. This is not okay. This is not allowed because of these spaces. So instead, you remove the space and it becomes this. But then this brings us into another problem. Sometimes when you remove spaces between some words, it gives you a different meaning entirely, right? Someone might call this ripe oranges or something like that. Someone might not know that it stands for ripe oranges. So that brings us to what we call naming conventions. Because, like I said, when you join words together, a good example is variable go on. If you remove the space, it becomes variable gone. And when you say this, you may not even know that this stands for go on. So to solve that problem, we come to naming conventions. Naming convention is how you name your variable. We're going to consider 3 naming conventions. We consider the snake casing. We consider the Pascal casing. And we consider the camel casing. So let's pick them one after the other. Snake casing. In snake casing, whenever you are joining more than one word together to form a variable name, you separate the words with underscore. So let's assume I have a variable called ripe oranges. These are 2 words. Since you can't have spaces in between, you separate the words with underscore like this. So this becomes variable ripe oranges equals to 20. This is snake kissing. Let's say I want the variable name to be number of ripe oranges so that it becomes more descriptive. I can say number of ripe oranges equals to 20. This is snake kissing. Remember, you are allowed to use underscore for your variable name. So that's the work of this underscore here. Next is Pascal kissing. When you are dealing with Pascal kissing, you start each word with an uppercase. Number of ripe oranges. So whenever you see an uppercase, you know that this is the beginning of a word. Capital N, capital O, capital R, capital O. So once you see uppercase, you know that this is the beginning of a word. So that makes it possible now for us to call the variable appropriately. For instance, let's say we have variable go on, it becomes variable go on. So you won't mistakenly call this gun. You won't mistakenly. Any questions so far? Okay. So that's for the Pascal casing. Let's talk about the camel casing. The camel case is also usually called the lower camel casing. So camel casing, it looks like the Pascal casing, except that the first word starts with a lowercase. Every other words there start with an uppercase. So this variable, if you are going to write this in camel casing, the first word will be small g. Every other word will be capital G. Will be uppercase. Number of ripe oranges will look like this. Number of ripe oranges. The first word starts with a lowercase. Every other word starts with an uppercase. So this is camel casing. And you can use any of these casing conventions, any of them. Your code will run fine. But there's something we call conventions. In JavaScript, the convention, the norm, the tradition in the JavaScript community is to use camel casing. So when there is a convention, it's good you always follow the convention of that community. I do say something. If you don't follow conventions, your code will still run fine. But then it's not going to be easy for other developers to work with you. So it's always good to follow conventions so that it will be easy to collaborate with you. So we're going to be using the camel casing for our work. So we'll move this to. This means our variable names will look like this. Question before we proceed. Okay. In absence of questions, we proceed. Let's say I have a button. Sorry, where's the other coming from? So I have a button. When I click on this button, I want to display something. Maybe I want to alert just by clicking on this button. This is it. Let's go to the browser. So when I click on this button, I want to alert something. We call this event. Event is an occurrence. That is when you do something. If I don't click, you are not alerting. Event is an action you want to take. So when I perform this action, then I want JavaScript to do this for me. That's an event. So you had a click event to the button. That is on click. we have different events on. Let's say I want you to do something. When I double click, you say on DBL click. But because I want it to alert when I click, you have on click. What you are saying is that whenever I click on this button, I want it to alert maybe 7. On click equals to alert 7, like this. When you click, it will alert 7. Close it. Click again, it will alert 7. I will delete it and do another thing. I want a situation that when I double click on it, I want it to alert 50. So I have a button. When I double click on this button, so that becomes on DBL click alert 50. It alerts 50. Let's get another button. Let's say new button. For this new button, whenever my mouse enters into the button, I want it to alert maybe 2. Whenever my mouse enters into the button, alert 2. So we come here and say on mouse enter alert 2. So all this on DBL click, on mouse enter, on click, they are events. They are events. That is actions. Whenever a user mouse enter into this button, then it will alert 2. Now, notice what happened. I don't even need to click. My mouse just needs to enter. It has alerted 2. Any question before we move on? Okay. Okay, Fawaz, you can ask a question. Fawaz Akinlabi. Okay, I can hear you now.
For my end, yeah, just showing your username like the T. It's not showing any video.
Oh, maybe your network. You can just leave and join again.
I don't know if others are seeing the video. Can you just ask one of the
Okay.
viewers?
Please, can we all see my screen?
Yes, we can see the video. We can see it.
You can see your screen. You can see the video.
Okay.
I think the issue is from here.
You can just leave and join again.
Maybe you should swipe. Maybe you should swipe to the video.
What is it?
Maybe you should swipe.
Okay.
Okay. Still the same. I will try to fix it.
Alright.
You can continue. I will try to fix it.
Alright.
Let me just stop.
Okay. So we looked at some events when your mouse enters, when you click, when your mouse moves out of it. Now, we said those things are events, but there are 2 broad classes of events. We have the key events and we have the mouse events. Sorry, someone wants to join. All these were those events we've looked at. They fall under mouse events. That is, they are things you do with your mouse. Key events are things you do with your keys. I mean the keys of your keyboard. But mouse events are things you do with your mouse. When you click with your mouse. When you double click with your mouse. On mouse enter, of course, this is even more obvious. When your mouse enter into this place, right? Those are mouse events, but we have some key events also. Let's look at some of them. So let's say I have an input. Inside this input, I can have on on key down. On key down, alert 2. So let's go to the browser and go to the inputs. Once my key goes down, it alert this J. As soon as my key goes down, it will alert 2. So that is, sorry, someone wants to join. Similarly, my key goes down. Once I press any key, that means that key has gone down. If any of my keys goes down, instantly it will alert 2. That is a key event. We still have some other key events on input, on key up, and all that we're going to look better as we proceed. But for now, let's stop here on key events and mouse events. Let's discuss a little problem and we'll look at how to solve that problem together. Look at this scenario. Who can tell me the meaning of this before we proceed? We talked about this in the last class. Who can tell me the meaning of this? DRY.
Do not repeat yourself.
Exactly, don't repeat yourself. Thank you. This is very important.
Yes, don't.
Thank you. This is very important. So let's see how it relates to what we're about to do now. Let's say I have a button. When the user clicks on this button, I want it to alert on click. I want it to alert 3 plus 5 minus, let's say 8, something like this. So just do this calculation, whatever it is, give me the results. I'll call this the first button. So go to the browser, click, we have 0. So let's say I have another button. And inside the second button, when I click on this button, I want it to do the same thing for me. That means I will write the codes, the same codes I have here. I have to write it here. When you click, it will do the same thing. Let's make the buttons, let's make them 3. So this will also do the same thing. But the problem with this approach is that in case I woke up one day and I want these 3 buttons to do different things. I mean, instead of this being maybe 3, I want this to be 7. That means this will still be, I will need to come here and change this to 7. I will need to come here and change this to 7. Because let's assume I forgot to change one of them. These 2, we have new results, and this one will still give me the old results. Four, 4, 0. So this is the problem of repeating yourself, writing the same codes again. In order to solve this, we bring in something we call functions. Functions. Let's see what a function is. So I will comment out all of this. Commenting means you are telling the browser to ignore the codes at this location. So when we load the codes, the browser will not read the codes there. So I want to comment out all of this. So when I get to the browser now, I won't see anything. So I want to create something we call function. To create a function, sorry, someone is about to join. So to create a function, you can do it this way. This is a very simple way to create a function. You write the function keyword followed by the name of your function. I can call it anything. But note, whatever name you give to your function must obey the rules that guide variable declaration. Who can give me one of those 4 rules?
It will not have special character.
Good. It must not have special character except dollar and underscore. Who can give me another one?
Your variable should not start with number.
Good. It must not start with a number. Remaining 2.
Okay. It may not be a keyword.
Good. It must not be a keyword. Then last one. Thank you. Last one.
It must not.
I can't tell you. Hello? It must not have space. White spaces. It must not have any space. So those are the 4 rules that guide variable declaration. So, sorry, someone is about to join. So I can call this variable my func. Like function followed by the name of your function. Now, but one key difference between a variable and a function is that when you create a function, you put parentheses, bracket like this, at the front of the function, then followed by curly braces. The function keyword, this is a keyword, function is a keyword. The name of your function, parentheses, then curly braces. Whatever you want the function to do will be within these curly braces. So let's say I want this function to alert 5. Now, the way a function works is that whenever you don't call on that function, the quotes inside the function will be ignored. So when I get to the browser, I will not see anything. That's because I've not called on this function. Whenever you have a function, if you want to run the codes inside the function, you need to call on the function. Now imagine this is outside the function, alert 7. When I get to the browser, I will automatically see 7. It's going to display 7 as soon as I get to the browser. This is it. But if it's within a function, on get to the browser, it's not going to display 7. That's because I have not called on this function. So the codes inside the function, they are ignored until you call on the function. So the next question is, how then do we call on a function? To call on a function, all you need to do is you mention the name of the function and you put parentheses at the front. So let's say I have a button. So when I click on this button, I want it to alert 7. So I'll come here and say on click. Remember, I want it to alert 7 whenever I click. So on click, then followed by the name of the function, my func. Then I'll put parentheses at the front. To call on a function, the name of the function followed by parentheses. So immediately you click on this button, instantly it will run the code inside this function. When I click again, it will run the codes again. So a function is used to group related codes together. Codes that work together, they are grouped together inside the same function. And also, function also help our code to be dry like that, so that we don't get to repeat ourselves. We don't get to write the same code again and again. And we'll see how it can help us to solve this problem here. But for now, I want us to understand how a function works. Let's do it again. Whenever I type inside this place on key up, colon, a function called, let's get a function. Let's say function display 7. So as you type here, I want to call on the function here. So we can say alert 7. So, oh, now it's not showing anything. That's because we are yet to put the function in here. Display 7. We put parentheses. Instantly, as your key goes up, it will call on this function. Your key goes, what happens is that when you press a key, the key is down. Once you release the key is up. So in that case, it will call this on key up and it will run this code. I come again. When you press the key, that key is down. When you remove your finger on a key, when you lift your finger, that key goes up. So that means it will call on this on key up and this will call on the function. So as we type now, we have the 7. Questions, as you type, we have 7. So let's now use this to handle these parts. What's going on? Okay. So what I want to do is that when I click on any of these 3 buttons, I want it to alert this for me. So I can create a function. Function, let's say alert var. What do I want this function to do? I'll cut it and put it here. So this will be alert var. This will also be alert var. This will also be alert var. So when I click on this one, it will run the code inside this function and do this. When I click on the second one, it will call on this function also, run the code here. When I click on the third one also, it will do the same thing for me. But the advantage of this approach is that if I wake up tomorrow and I want the 3 buttons to do something else now. All I need to do is just to change it here alone, that's all. Sorry, someone wants to join. So all I need to do is just to change it here alone. Because this button is calling on this function alert var. This is also calling on the same function. This is also calling on the same function. So I don't need to change it at different places. Just change it here and it will affect the 3 buttons. And this is the approach we're going to use throughout this training. So let's play with this before we leave this section. Let's play with this a bit. Let's say I have inputs. Let's start with this. I have a div. Then I have a button. When I click on this button, I want to display, let's say 80 inside this div. I come again. When I click on this button, I want it to display 80 inside this div. Presently, let's say click me. Presently, when I click, nothing happens. But when I click on this button, that is on click. What you're saying is that when I click, right, on click, what do I want to do when I click? So let's get a function to handle that part first. Event handler. We can this function, we call them event handler. The functions that you attach to an event, remember on click is an event, we call such function an event handler. So we can create a function. You can call it display 80. Again, when I click, nothing happens yet. What do I want this function to do? Put 80 here. So we're going to give this an ID, just like we did in our last class. I can call it results or display. Let's call it display. So on click of this, display dot inner text equals to 80. So whenever we run the code inside this function, it will always put 8c into this place. Lastly, we attach it to this place, display 8c. So when you click on this, it will run the code inside this function. And this function will place 8c inside this div. So click, you can see 8c there. Let's proceed. Any question before we move on? Okay, let's move on. Let's play with another thing again. Okay, let's say I have an input. I have a button. So when the user clicks on this button, I want to get whatever the user typed here, subtract 4 from it, and display the results. I can make it. When the user clicks on this button, I want to get whatever the user types inside this input, subtract 4 from it, and display the results, or alert the results. So firstly, you can create your function. You can call it maybe calculate input. You can call it any name, but this name I decided to call my function. So when the user clicks on this button, I want it to do the codes here. So I'll say click colon calculate input. So I want to see if this button is successfully linked with this function. I can just say alert. So let's do that together. So good, it alerts something. That means the button is successfully linked with our function. Let's proceed. But what I want you to do is get whatever the user typed inside this input for me. So we give this an ID so that we can use the ID to target this input. So I can call it maybe IMP. So we can say alert. Remember, an input is an editable container, so we use value, imp.value. So when you click on this button, it will run the codes here. It will alert imp.value. That means whatever is inside this input. 8, 12, but that's not what we want to do. We want to say get that and subtract 4 from it. So we can say imp.value minus 4. So if you have 20 here, 20 minus 4, that gives us 16. 9 minus 4, that gives us 5. But we can still make this maybe a bit better. Create a variable. Let that variable be, I can say input value equals to. So what you are doing here is that when you click on this button, you are creating a variable called input value, and the value of that input value will be whatever the user typed here minus 4. Note this IMP, this is the ID, dot value minus 4. You save it inside this input value. Now I can say alert input value. Now I want to give us a task. You tell me what to do. But instead of alerting this, I want to place it inside this div. What do I do? Instead of alerting this minus 4, I want to place the result inside this div. What do I do? Hello? You can tell us, I need a volunteer. Instead of alerting it, I want it to be inside it, inside this div so that I can see it right there on the page, not as an alert box, but as part of the page. Can't tell me what to do.
Please, can you come again?
Now, presently, when I type a value here, when I type a value here and I click on this button, you see it's displaying the results in an alert box, in a dialog box like this. But I don't want it to display in a dialog box. Instead, I want it to display it right here on the page inside this div.
Okay, so you're not asking how to be about it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, what we are going to do is we are going to give that div where you want to display it, you are going to give it an ID.
Okay.
So that you'll be able to identify it.
Okay.
So we'll now call that ID dot inner text.
Yeah, like this.
Now give it the value.
You mean like this?
No, like we'll
Okay.
call the ID the script.
I'm inside the script also. You mean inside this function?
Okay, yeah, that's okay.
Do you mean inside the
Yes,
function?
yes, because
Okay.
yes, inside the function. Because it's when we click that place that the function will be called.
Okay. Okay. So is that dot inner text equal? What am I to do with it? What's the next thing to type? Hello?
It's equal to input value.
Exactly. Good. Thank you very much. So we have the results.
You're welcome.
Now, next task. What I want to do now is this. I want to have an input here, another input here, a button, and a div. So what I want to do is that when a user enter the number here, let's say 12, and the user entered another number here, let's say 7. When I click on this button, 12 multiplied by 7, I think that's 84. It displays the result of the multiplication of these two inside this div. Do you understand? The user will enter a number here, enter another number here. When I click on this button, it will multiply the two numbers together, put the results in the div. Please, I need someone to help me out. How do I go about it? Someone aside Olatai. I think Olatai was the one that helped us see the last one. I need someone to help us. Hello everyone. Hello.
I can hear you, sir.
Okay, I need someone to help me with this problem.
Can I try again?
Okay, let's go.
So, we are going to create a function.
Okay. What should I call the function?
Multiply something.
Okay. Function create type.
then we get it. We have to give the two inputs IDs, different IDs. Let's say first value or input 1.
Okay. Okay. Done.
So inside the function,
Okay.
we're going to store the value we are getting from this input to a variable. So you can declare a variable first input.
Okay.
To be equals to first value plus value.
Okay. What next? Done. Hello. Hello, Alataya.
Yes, I'm with you. My phone, my network freeze.
Okay. Alright. So what next am I to do?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. The next thing is we are going to declare another variable results. Then we're now multiplying the two variable first input and second input.
Okay. Done.
So then the diff, whereby we want to get our results, we have to give it ID too.
Okay. Okay.
So after doing that, we will now call the ID display results dot. Yes, display result dot inner text to be equals to the results variable that store the multiplication.
Exactly. Good. Thank you so much. Then we attach it to this button.
Yes, on click, exactly.
So when the user clicks on this button, instantly it will run all of these codes for us. It gets the first input, that is, get whatever the user typed here, store it as variable first input. Then instantly it gets the second input, second value dot value, and stores as variable second input. Then it gets a new variable called result, and that becomes this multiplied by this. Then display dot display dot inner text equals to this result. So let's say we have 7 here and this is 4. Then we'll click on this button. We have 28. If there is 9 here and that this is 10, when you click, we have 90. We have 4 here and this is 24. Then we have 96. Any questions so far? Okay. In absence of question, let's call it a day at this point. Let's call it a day. Let me give us a small assignment to work on, an assignment to work on. Please, I'll check in our next class. I'll need you to show me the assignment. You can send the assignment to this. techinyuk@gmail.com. What the assignment is, the way it's going to look like is this. So there are three inputs here. This is the first input, this is second input, and this third input is disabled. Right. So what we are going to do is that a user will come here, type a value here, let's say 6. Then the user comes here, type another value, let's say 2. Then when you click on this, click me, it will say 6 divided by 2, that's 3. It will put the results inside this inputs. Come again. The user will come here, type a value, come here, type another value. When the user clicks on this button, it will say 12 divided by 4, that's 3. It will put the results here. I hope we get the task.
Yes, sir.
Alright. So before we go, let's do a quick recap of what we've done today. So today we continue from where we stopped in the last class, talking about variables. Now we said all variables must obey some four rules. Firstly, it must not start with a number. It must not be a keyword. It must not have special characters except dollar and underscore, and it must not have white spaces. Then that led us to some naming conventions. We talked about snake casing, where you separate multiple words with underscore. Then we talked about Pascal casing, where we start each word with an uppercase. Then to the camel casing, where you start the first word with a lowercase, but every other word there starts with an uppercase. Then we talked about functions. Functions are used to group related codes. Functions also help us to keep our code short so that we don't repeat the same codes. And today we looked at how we can use a function to make the codes try so that we don't get to repeat the same codes. Now, to create a function, you write the function keyword, followed by the function name, then parentheses, the curly braces. Whatever you want the function to do will be inside these curly braces. The codes inside the function, they are ignored until you call on the function. If I put anything here, this is ignored. When I get to the browser, it's not executed until I call on the function. And I can use an event to call on a function, or I can call on the function directly here. So immediately you call on the function here, it will go back and run these codes for you. Also, we can use an event to call on a function. You can use key events, you can use mouse events. So we looked at, tonight we use more of mouse events. So on click of this button, this is an event, click is an event, then you call on this function, which is an event handler, the name of the function. You put parentheses after it. So when you click on this button, it will execute the codes inside this function. So it will alert like this. Click and it alerts. Then you can now use that to do whatever you want to do now. We can now say, instead of alerting alone, put something inside this div. So in alert class, we've done something like this, give it an ID. But now, instead of just alerting, put something inside this place. So we call on the ID. Now the reason inside this function, the reason this is inside this function is because if you don't put it in a function, it will automatically put 4 inside this place immediately you load it on the browser. What I'm saying is this: imagine this is outside the function now, and this function is not there. So when you get to the browser, 4 is already there, and that's not what we want. We only want 4 to be there when we click, not immediately we get to the browser. And that's why we put it inside this function, so that this function is called upon only when the user clicks on this button. So when the user clicks on this button, it will run the codes here. That's when it's going to see this line and know that, oh, I'm to place 4 within this div. And that's what happens here. So that's the summary of our class. Ensure you do the assignment. Thanks for coming. Please, these simple assignments, please get them done. They are so important. The assignments will keep getting more complex gradually. We keep building it up.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so